After a few minutes, the scene had practically cleared. What was left, under the drizzle of the sprinklers, were the train, both ends charred, the bodies of those who had been claimed by the explosions or trampled underfoot, and those who could not bear to leave their loved ones behind and cried desperately, holding their bodies. Just as inert as the dead was an accordion, bent and smashed, with half its keys broken off and scattered on the platform floor. The bomb squad arrived first on the scene, 6 men in full protective gear who analyzed the premises for any active threats. Once they had cleared the platform, it was mere minutes until it was swarming with police, fire, and ambulance personnel. They removed the survivors first, in a mad rush to reach the hospital before they expired, and then removed from the scene those who had lingered behind. Some forensic experts photographed the scene while others analyzed the blast bits, and still others scoured the floor for evidence. This was the scene that Bernard Chaput from the Terrorism Department at the Direction Centrale du Renseignement Intérieur, the French intelligence agency, saw when he arrived at the train station. He surveyed the damage with horror, treading carefully on his polished black dress shoes so as not to interfere with any evidence. He asked several of the men working there for their preliminary opinions. He first made a call to his boss at the DCRI, filling him in with the details. Then he made another to someone a continent away, across the ocean. Chapter 1. Washington, D.C., December 14th. So, what have we got? William Schroeder's voice came across as tired, mechanical, and unceremonious. Philip Chapman, Buck, to just about everyone who knew him, sat along with the rest of the emergency task force in their conference room in the Pentagon, with its dark hardwood table, which was arrayed with telephones and Ethernet outlets and surrounded by 10 chairs and blank monitors. The room was bare and sterile compared to Chapman's Situation Room back at Langley, where he led a crisis response team that he had personally handpicked. There, the walls were covered with clippings and photos forming complex diagrams, and boxes of takeout littered the floor, with none of the people on the team having had the time to stop and clean it up in days. This was the kind of fancy official room that Chapman had never gotten used to, where things were discussed but never done. Schroeder, who was a section chief at the DoD, but was currently serving as task force chair and special liaison to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, commanded the head of the table. Chapman, as the principal CIA representative at the table, was at his left. Populating the other chairs were representatives from various other government agencies, from the FBI to the NSA. Schroeder's heavy brow was furrowed into a stony scowl, and he looked no one in the eye. His face was pale, with heavy dark bags under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled and his collar undone. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, and all energy had been completely drained from him. Chapman could sympathize. "Death toll is at 32 at the moment," said Chapman, relating what his contact in the French Central Directorate of Interior Intelligence had reported. 3 Americans among them, tourists on vacation, a couple with their young son. "Jesus," said Schroeder. "I'll let the Director of National Intelligence know. The President is going to want to mention them in his address to the nation. Do we have names for the family?" "I'll find out and make sure to send that along to you," said Chapman. Chapman's exhaustion didn't stem from the fact that he'd gotten pulled out of bed at 2:30 a.m. for this meeting. He was as used to being pulled out of bed at all hours as anyone who worked in foreign affairs. And it wasn't his having to burn the midnight oil every night besides. No, it was the relentlessness of this crisis. 3 months now since the first attack, since the New York-bound airplane had crashed in Atlanta, streaking across Interstate 20 minutes after taking off from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Everyone on board, 107 people, was dead, plus 6 more on the ground who had been in the path of the crash. Chapman remembered vividly where he had been, running on his treadmill and watching the morning news when the announcement came. Along with probably most of the country, he had thought terrorists from the moment he'd heard about the disaster. After that, Every hour that passed with no terrorist group taking credit for the attack